Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's January 18th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And again, just not much happening today. We spent most of the day in this range of about, well, you can see it here, 61.50 to about 60.65. So a 3 point, maybe slightly more than 3 points. So there's just not, there's just not much happening here. The only way to trade that is to buy the lows and try to sell the highs. And, there's just not much going on here. Generally, you want to wait on either a failed breakout like this one, or a lower high, or a higher low off the bottom. So lower high off the top or higher low off the bottom, or a double test rule or something of that nature. So we just didn't get many of those today. There were a couple of news items. This was probably news driven here, that came out around 7:30 Central Standard Time, and there was another one around 9. It didn't really affect much, and really this one was slow to react. So I don't know if it was news driven or not, but I'm guessing this was right after the news, so I'm guessing that's probably what drove it down. And it doesn't matter. We don't care what the news is or anything like that. We just want to know when something big is coming out so that we don't get caught off guard. So past that, we don't really care because you can't predict it anyway. But there's your first leg down. So after that, you were looking for a second leg. You said we went a few ticks further than that. So we kind of overshot this little tight channel. So that was a pretty good trade. I would have also measured these two legs and looked for that as well. But we went way past that. So we actually got two legs over on this side. Um, and if you measure these over here, these are probably two legs too. Notice this first move up, and then we finally made another low point right here. If you measure that, we didn't quite get a measured leg, but it is real close, within a couple of ticks. Um, so that might have given you something, but I wouldn't be. I'd be real leery about trading anything through here. So there's no way to catch this last. I'm going to exit right here on anything I bought off these lows. I'm not going to risk it backing up on me, so I don't see that you catching this last little bit anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But just something to think about. Once we started going higher, that would have been my target. But by the time we got up there, it's after 2 o'clock anyway. So unless you're managing a runner, um, which I probably wouldn't on this tight of a range, so and it's not really worth it because what you would have gotten, it went maybe 2 points further, and you're probably not going to get all that. So it's not worth risking it for a point. So that's why I usually don't do runners on real tight ranges like this. Now, if I get a failed break lower, I'm probably going to hold on to a runner there because a lot of times you'll catch the low of the day. And same thing, if you get a failed break higher, I might hold a runner because you'll catch the high of the day. Or even if it's not the low or the high of the day, because this wouldn't have been the low of the day because it was down here. Um, but even if I'm not catching the low of the day or the high of the day, you're going to catch an important low of the day or an important high. And you notice prices never went lower than that again the rest of the day. So that turns out to be a very important low. So remember that on your failed breaks. And this was a pretty obvious support area across here by the time that broke below there. And that's why I like that for that blue trade. Generally, I'd tell you to wait on a higher low. But in this case, when it's a failure, take it because you're going to catch, if you're timing it right and you catch it right, you're going to catch an important low for the day. And if is the very low of the day, you're probably going to catch the low of the day, and you'll see that happen quite often. But let's back up. We'll go through each of the trades and then we'll wrap it up for today. This won't take long because there's not many of them. But this was a great trade, and if you caught this one, you caught a runner right out of the gate today, and you can get most of the main move of the day right there in one trade. So notice this little trap. Notice you're going up, first entry short, second entry short, and but that's a second entry short right there. But it's look how neutral that bar is. You can't go short there, so you just kind of sit tight, um, and you don't want to go long right into that double top. There's probably a trend line. You never really get a good trend line here. You can see it doesn't really matter. Um, There really is not enough bars there to ever really get a trend. This is just like a range day, and we're coming off the high again, and you get a lower high. But the thing I like is it broke higher and then turned and went out the other side. So just go short right there. Or you could wait when that ends up that bearish, just go short right there. You got to be a little concerned about the EMA being here, but no more movement we've had. This looking like a range day. We're probably headed to the lows. You don't know that it's going to take off like this, but you figure it's going to come down and test this low and maybe even this one. And if who knows, if it turns out to be a downtrend, you might catch the high of the day and it may trade down all day. So you want to try to catch these. And then notice what happens here. You had your two legs down here and a little failed second entry long. So you're probably going to go lower there. I got to point this out. You got to be a little bit concerned. There's not much room between there and those three matching bars. But with this being a trap and this being right off that trend line, that confirming the trend line, being a failed second entry long, I like that one. And man, look at it go. Ooh. It just rockets down. And again, be measured those things the two ways I showed you, and expect probably a measured move. And in this case, it's a little more. So it worked out real well. But then we bounce. This one's tempting. This looks like an overshoot right here. We actually overshot it here, but we don't have a close outside that trend line yet. So I'm a little bit. When you're that far away from the EMA and you get an overshoot, you got to be concerned about it. So I was a little concerned right there. I'm pretty confident that was going back, but it's just really aggressive. When you start trying to pick bottoms like that and you're wrong, maybe we can make it green, but I'd tell you just leave that alone. Wait for a better setup. And then notice we're moving up. We get a break here. We tried to make a new high, we could, and we just kind of start going sideways, and then it looks like a trap here, but I'm not going to go long into a double top because we may have a big down pattern here. That's a pretty strong move right there, and there's a good chance we're going to retest this low. We're going to at least try to retest it, so I just kind of hang tight. And then notice we make a double test, and it bounces off those closes of that trend line I drew off that close. So I like going long right there just simply because it's a double test and there's a little break lower that fails. You still have to be concerned about going long into these highs. But at this point, I figure we're headed back to these highs. And with it being a trap there and a double test and all, I felt like it was worth taking. And then we push up and we pull back and we hit that trend line again and we really confirm it right there. Again, this thing opened down here real bearish and then went out the upper side. So when it broke higher, I probably would have dropped a limit order enough to get out before reaching that high and taking that one. That's why that's not blue. You don't really, this is a pretty good signal bar, but it's right into these other highs. So you got to get in this thing with enough room to get out before here. So that's why it's green. And then there's a failed second entry short here. Actually, there's not. This actually is a new low, so that's more like a first entry long. But you could actually treat that with all those matching lows right there. You could almost treat that like a new low, and then there's a first entry and a second entry, and it fails. It's right at the trend line, the EMA. The only problem is we've been coming back to this line a couple times, and we hadn't got back to the upper line. So, and if you just say, well, hey, maybe the line's right here. And we've had a big overshoot, so there's a good chance you could get trapped right here. And so if you enter this one, you've got to get in low enough here that you can get out before you get here. And you could have, if you just let it break higher, then dropped a limit order one tick back, because this is a 4-tick move. And if you would have entered where you're supposed to with a stop, it would have been a 4-tick failure. So just remember that. You got to get in this one with room to get out, or you would have got burned like you did right there, only to see it come right back again. I gave this one a green one. At this point, you didn't know that this doesn't look rangy yet. You're getting some resistance here, and you got some support here, but which you want to pay attention to, but it doesn't really look like a range yet. So I like this one just simply as a bounce off of these lows. It's a fairly bullish bar, and notice what happens coming down, and then it makes a higher low, and then it goes lower, and it bounces instantly off that line. That's, even though that looks like a doji, that's a fairly bullish bar. It could have easily closed up there on its high as it did low. That's a timing issue. So I like that one. Easy scalp. You get a higher low here, but that's definitely more of a bearish bar or neutral than it is bullish, and you don't have much room there. So just sit tight. And then to go short, now it's really looking like a range. But to go short, you want a lower high, which you get here, but that's a real neutral bar. That's a neutral bar. You're right into the EMA. I'd say just wait and see if maybe it doesn't go higher, or if maybe you can get a trap. And guess what? It turns up, touches that line, gives you the double test of that level again, and turns down. Just go short right there. And that is kind of congestive, so you got to keep that in mind. But with it trying to go higher twice, really 3 times here, 4 times, 5, 6, 7, and there being a failed second entry long here, you're probably headed to the other side. So I like that trade. And then, of course, we already talked about this one slightly. You get the failed break lower here, nice bullish bar, go long right there. And hopefully you catch a low, an important low, and it just keeps going at some point. It didn't really do that here. It comes back and it gives it another double test, and so you get another chance to go long. You don't want to be going short here right into this support, and you might have considered going long right here. And if you did, again, that's probably one you could argue for it being green, but I think you're better off to wait and try to get a higher low. But you get another test, so now you got a double test of this level again, and you're getting to go long right off the lows. You get a higher low here, but it's a very neutral bar. That's a doji. It's closed right in the middle. It's not near one end or the other. This is a doji. So, but that's a new low. It's lower than that one. So first entry, second entry. So, and that's a big bearish bar. And again, you don't want to go low right into those, or short right into those lows. So you're going to find some trap people that don't know any better than that, thinking that they're outsmarting everybody by going short there, and you go long. And that was an easy trap. This one is close to being blue. The only reason I didn't make it blue is because there's some highs right here that you got to be concerned about. The resistance looks like it kind of moved down, but it eventually pushes on through there. So that's the reason I didn't make it blue. Otherwise, normally that would be blue. Or if that would have been, if this bar would have looked more like this, I probably would have made it blue. But with it being real neutral and right into those highs, I felt it was a little bit risky. So, there just weren't a lot of high probability trades today. And again, we talked about it yesterday. The only real way to trade this, and a couple of people asked me yesterday about trends. Well, when the market looks like this, there's still little short trend lines back and forth. There's even one working up here. You can see that little trend line right there. Let's just see how it fits on the other side. That's usually telltale. And you can see there's a nice little trend there, but you don't really need it. By the time you start to really get it confirmed and using it, it's too late to enter. Really, the only plays you can make on a day like this is to buy off of this support line or sell off this resistance line. And if you're buying, generally, unless you get a failed break or something, you're generally better off to wait on a higher low. So this would be your first higher low, and I already explained why I didn't like that one, because that bar is too bearish. And if you're selling off the high, you wait on a lower high, which comes right here. But again, I explained why I didn't like that one, because it's too neutral. 2 bars in a row that are really neutral, and a little 2-bar matching bar double bottom there. So, but that's generally how you're going to have to trade a day like this. There's just no other way to trade it. And if you could have even bought blindly. If you bought every time prices came to the low, and the first bar that touched it, you bought above it, you would have made money. Same thing if you sold it. Eventually, I think you had a failure right here that wouldn't have worked off the highs. And notice that it's after 2 o'clock, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway.
And then there's bars stacking up there pretty strongly, so that's another reason to skip that. So just remember that. That's the only way you can really trade a range like this is to buy these lows and sell these highs. And then if you wait on a better or a great setup, then things are going to work out a lot better. And when I say a great setup, I'm talking about a little trap or a double test, or like here's a trap that failed second. That's a double test and a failed second entry long. This is a double test. It's not a failed second entry short though. We had several moves on the way down here, so but that double test is usually a very good sign because that's what the market does. It works in twos and it tends to test things in twos. And if you test this low twice and it can't get through, it's probably going higher. If you test this high 2 times, and that doesn't mean 2 times from here to here. That means once we moved back up here and we set this high, you'd want to see it tested twice, and it didn't. It just kept going. But notice how as it set that high, then it tested it twice. It set this low, and it worked down and tested it twice. This is probably not as good an example, but it's still a double test of this level. So that's what you're looking for. But anyway, that's pretty much it. If you could have just caught one of these early on, you made some. It could be a really good day. Where if you didn't, you just had to take what it gave you the rest of the day, which wasn't a whole lot. So, but anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up and get this uploaded, and we'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. But this is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and I'll see you next time.